Okay, so the Metal Slug series has started to appear on the Nintendo Switch as Neo Geo Virtual Console, quote, games. You familiar with the Metal Slug series? Played one of the games? All of the games? A few of the games? There are plenty to go around across 1, 2, X, 3, 4, 5, and 6, XX, and the list goes on. On the Nintendo Switch, I decided to grab one of them, and I have a review for you. So, without further delay, here's my review of the Nintendo Switch version of Metal Slug 3. Metal Slug 3 takes place several years after Metal Slug 2. Morden, the villain, is assumed defeated and his armies are being taken out. But when they have surprising organization, the Special Strike Force that once took him down are reassembled on the assumption that the alien army that Morden was once allied with are back and aiming to take over the planet. Now, the story of the series is a bit unorthodox in today's world because it's not explained in story cutscenes, it's just kind of shown as the game goes throughout. So when you get to a boss fight, you see a little bit of dialogue here and there while you're shooting, and that's how the story unfolds. Metal Slug 3 is a run-and-gun shooter. You go through 2D arenas in a side-scrolling fashion, constantly firing off bullets at enemies, environments, mini-bosses, bosses, and the list goes on. It's kind of like Contra, but more arcadey and more geared towards co-op. Now, this version of Metal Slug 3 is based on the original Neo Geo version, which was ported from arcades. As far as features go, there are 4 game modes you can go through. Half of them in the original game, the Japanese and English versions. Then you've got high score mode, where you can kind of go through the game and it scores you until you get a game over. Then you have caravan mode, which is like a timed version of high score mode, where instead of just going through the game, you are going into the game in 5-minute segments. But the biggest addition, and my favorite addition, is the options for emulation. When you're in the game, you hit the plus button on the Switch, you get the options menu, which has a ton of customization and convenience. You can create interrupt save data, which is basically a save state. You can update or customize the controls. You can view an in-game manual, online score rankings, reset the game, and you can go into game settings that let you set difficulty, number of players, language, blood settings, tutorial. The biggest thing you want to look for here is the display options. The Neo Geo version of this game is set on a 4:3 ratio, which means it'll display in its original resolution with some nice annoying borders on the left and right. Go into display options, you can stretch it out to full screen. First of all, you think, okay, now it's going to look really bad, but it has a filter option so you can smooth out the edges. That way, even if you're playing on a giant TV, full screen, you don't see the pixelization. Now when you go into a game, you basically just start a game, choose a character, and you're spawned in the first level. Progressing through each level is basically a matter of running in side-scrolling fashion, shooting through enemies, and choosing paths to decide which way you want to go. Now the series is also known for being difficult, but the arcade roots really helps you with this. If you run out of lives and you die, you don't really get a game over. You get a screen that acts like you need to put a new quarter in the arcade machine. So just tap the L and R buttons, you can respawn and keep going. This basically allows you to never get a true game over unless you run down that timer. It's still difficult though. As an example, the first time I went through the game, I beat the game after 131 respawns. So if we were playing this in an arcade, I would have spent about $33 on one run through the game. Just one run. Note that since this is an arcade game, or was an arcade game, it's not that long. The entire campaign can be completed in about an hour, but it has replayability in alternate paths that I mentioned earlier. Every level has a fork in the road section where you can choose different paths. It could be the difference between a water level, a flying level, or a land level, or just what type of enemies or what type of terrain you're going through. But the point is, there are so many different combinations that every single time you play the game can technically be different than the last time you played the game. Plus, there's the fact that this game supports local co-op. If you go out into the Switch menu, set up each Joy-Con to be functioning separately, you can jump up into the game and have 2-player couch co-op. And once you start it, it's pretty straightforward. You just have to make sure your two characters stay relatively close to one another, otherwise the game won't let you progress if one character is all the way on the left side of the screen and the other character is all the way on the right. Now, a lot of this is sounding pretty good. The main gripe I have with the game is the price point, and that is in comparison to other means of buying the game. On the Nintendo Switch eShop, Metal Slug 3 costs $7.99, which is $8, and £6.29 on the UK store. Now, this is half of the price of the PS4 and PS Vita remake of Metal Slug 3, but the Metal Slug Anthology costs $20 on the PSP and PS4. So if you were to buy the Anthology for $20, you would get Metal Slugs 1, 2, X, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that would bring it down to about $3 a piece. So with handheld fans, or just people in general, you just have to think, would I rather spend $8 for one game on the Switch, or would I rather pay $20 for 7 games on the PS Vita or the PS4? Now with presentation, visually you can expect it to look a bit dated with pixelization, but the nice thing here is the filters. I mentioned that in the gameplay section. When you expand the screen or just display it on a TV in general, and you apply the filters, everything is smoothed out and everything looks really crisp and great. So even though this is a very old game, it'll look really nice on the screen as long as you go into those options and apply those filters. And I don't really have anything to complain about the performance. The only slowdown in the game is the dramatic slowdown that was built into the arcade version when giant enemies explode. Just things that are supposed to happen instead of little glitches or problems happening with the actual emulation on the Switch. So no real problems there. Now let's get to battery life. Since this is a 2D game, you're going to get a lot of battery life out of this game. Not as much as games like Kamiko, which I'll explain when I review that later this week or next week. But here are the battery life tests I made and the times I got from 100% to 0%. With max brightness with the Wi-Fi on, you're going to get 3 hours and 46 minutes. With max brightness and the Wi-Fi off, you're going to get 3 hours and 52 minutes. If you have the brightness down with the Wi-Fi on, 5 hours. And with low brightness with no Wi-Fi, with the Wi-Fi turned off, airplane mode on, you're going to get 5 hours and 8 minutes. Now, considering that putting the system in airplane mode only gets you an extra 6 to 8 minutes, I really don't see much of a point in doing that. You might as well just keep the Wi-Fi on because 6 to 8 minutes isn't very much. But either way, you're going to get 3.5 to 5 hours out of the game, which is really nice. Now, in conclusion, Metal Slug 3 is really all it was back in its original Neo Geo and arcade days, with a few extra things thrown in. The asking price may turn people away if they own the Anthology or are looking to buy the Anthology on Vita or PS4, but you really can't argue that this game is a fun, mindless shooter perfect for pick-up and play sections, couch co-op, or just any time you want to play something casual and fun. Reviews to Go rates Metal Slug 3 a 9 out of 10. If you'd like to comment on this further, feel free to below, or head to the website www.reviewstogo.com, and you should be looking forward to a Fax RMX review later this week.